Thanks very much, Richard. As you can see, I was busy scribbling down the results, and forgive me if I've got some of them wrong. I'm just not that fast a writer. So I'm going to touch upon a couple of things in the time I've got. But to give you some context, we work across the professional services and financial services segments in particular, also including the executive search communities. And we've seen a number of things happen over the course of the last 9 months as the pandemic has taken its grip. ESG is such a large subject. I'm only going to touch upon 3 areas, and briefly at that, but obviously happy to take questions after the session. So, the first and probably one of the biggest that we are involved in is all around diversity. It started off with the focus around gender diversity and working with clients and, in fact, partners to ask the question, what is actually being done? Now, as everyone is aware, it is very much in the news. Gender diversity has been very, very important for many years. And now there is much more of a focus around diversity, particularly for ethnic minorities, but also in other areas as well. So one of the things that we've been looking at and working on is, how do you promote change? Because I think the emphasis that we get from our clients and the people we talk to is, it's very easy to talk about it. It's less easy to actually put practical steps in place to enable companies or organizations to effect change. And it's our belief that you have to start not only at the top, but also at the bottom. So clearly any change will be driven by the board and the leadership team, and part and parcel of that in terms of the survey around the last question. The diversity of board and the leadership team, the executive committees and the management team, how diverse is it? Unless you are seeing change there, it won't start to filter down the rest of the organization. But at the same time, how are you going to look after those people just starting those careers or are in middle management and looking to move on? So we are seeing many companies now putting policies in place to try and affect change. In fact, being part of Euromoney, that is one of the things that we are doing. And certainly one of the big indicators for us, particularly from a governance standpoint, would be the formation of a diversity and inclusion committee, focusing not just on diversity, but also inclusion. It neatly leads into another aspect that I think doesn't make a lot of surprising news around social mobility, but it's still a point, which is educational, intellectual diversity across your company. I'm sure, as we all know, there has been a tendency in the past that you don't have that intellectual diversity necessarily, and that can stifle the growth. Why is this important? Well, you need to be able to share thoughts and processes from people of many different backgrounds. So promoting social mobility is critically important. And again, companies we are seeing are beginning to promote that by forming dedicated committees with people that have experience in that. So they are actively looking at people's backgrounds to say, well, where you come from? How can we help you if you're coming from a disadvantaged background? And the final area that I wanted to touch upon is climate change, because actually it all pulls everything together as far as I'm concerned. We're all seeing the terrible wildfires that are going on in California, and many of my friends and colleagues are actually based on the West Coast, and I get some really horrible stories about how they're having to deal with it. But at the end of the day, the commentary around, is this to do with climate change, is becoming more and more impactful. Indeed, one of the individuals that I used to work with, he's a senior journalist, has now started writing a column about climate change. And we are actively trying to work with organizations like Chapter Zero to promote the need for climate change. So what does that mean from a board standpoint? Well, really, it's helping non-executive directors understand what tools are out there to help them affect change. Because it's very easy to say, oh, well, as a strategy, we're going to do this. But unless you have guidance and assistance and advice, then organizations like Chapter Zero can really help. And more importantly, they're global in nature. So what are we doing around it? Well, from my perspective, it's about collaboration and partnerships, which in a pandemic world means that events like this, where we're networking remotely for the first time and not doing it face to face, become very, very important. You reach out to people, you're not afraid to do so, and you absolutely persevere in building those relationships to help change within the ESG environment.